All right, in case you're having some difficulty counting significant figures on your own or on your homework assignment, let's go ahead and review the rules for counting sig figs. All right, for the first rule, all non-zeros count. A non-zero is the number that's between 1 and 9. All of those numbers except 0. All captive zeros are going to count. A captive zero is simply a zero that's going to be sandwiched between two non-zero numbers. Leading zeros do not count. A leading zero, you're more familiar with them. If you're not quite sure, it's when you see all those zeros in front of a number that's smaller than 1. Okay, we'll show you some examples of that. Now when it comes to trailing zeros, there's two things to keep in mind. Trailing zeros are going to count as significant figures if there is a decimal. If you don't have a decimal, then those zeros at the end are not going to count. Let's take a look at our first example. Okay, if we have 5.238, here we have four numbers that are all non-zeros, so therefore all four of them are going to be considered significant. So I have 4 sig figs in this number. All right, let's take a look at this example. Here we know that the 5 is going to be significant, the 1 is going to be significant, and then this 0 right here, that 0 is a captive 0. Why is it a captive 0? Because it's sandwiched between two non-zero numbers right here. Okay, so therefore it is going to be considered significant, and I'm going to have 3 sig figs. All right, let's take a look at this number right here. These 3 zeros right here, those are leading zeros. Okay, remember, leading zeros don't count. Okay, so I'm not going to include those in my significant figure count. Only the 6 counts because it's a number that's between 1 and 9, a non-zero, and the 5 is going to count because it's also a non-zero. So this number has 2 sig figs. What about this number? We know 5 counts. These right here, those are trailing zeros. And we know trailing zeros count only if what? Only if there is a decimal. There is a decimal right there. If there's a decimal and there's trailing zeros, then those zeros count. So this number is going to have 3 significant figures. Let's try this one. 500 with no decimal point. These zeros right here, these are trailing zeros, no decimal. Okay, so therefore, I'm only going to have one significant figure. It's going to be just that 5 right there. All right, let's take a look at 500 with a decimal. Okay, these are still trailing zeros. We know the 5 counts because it's a non-zero, but since there is a decimal here, these zeros are going to be considered significant also. So this number has 3 sig figs. All right, let's take a look at this one. Okay, these are leading zeros. Leading zeros never count. We know this 5 counts as being significant. This 0 is going to count. Why? Well, look, it's a captive 0. It's captive because it's between the 5 and the 3, so therefore it's going to count. This 3 counts because it's a non-zero. And you're probably thinking, well, what about this one? This guy right here is a trailing 0. And you have to look in the number. Do you see a decimal point? Yes, I do. If you see a decimal point and you have a trailing 0, that's going to be considered significant. So this number has 4 sig figs. All right, what about this number? Okay, there's a captive 0. That's a captive 0. That is a trailing 0 with a decimal point. Okay, so this number is going to have 6 significant figures. Let's take a look at this number. We know the 6 counts, we know the 4 counts, and it's all up to these zeros. I do not see a decimal point, so I know these zeros do not count as being considered significant in the number. So this number only has 2. All right, this number, these are going to be leading zeros. Leading zeros never count, so therefore there's only going to be 1 sig fig in this number. All right, let's take a look at this number. This number All right, there is no decimal. If you don't see a decimal, okay, and you have all these zeros, they're not going to be counted. So therefore, there's only one sig fig in this number. Okay, let's take a look at this number. I know the 1 is going to count, the 3 counts, and the 4 counts. I don't see a decimal point, so this one is not going to count as being a sig fig. So I'm going to have 3 numbers. Now, if I did have a decimal point, I would have 4 sig figs here. Oh, let's take a look at this number. This right here is a captive 0. Captive zeros count. There's no decimal here. Okay, we have no decimal. If we don't have a decimal point, that 0 does not count. So therefore, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sig figs in this number. All right, let's take a look at this one. Now, this is very easy when you have scientific notation. Do not take the number out. Leave the number in scientific notation. You don't want to mess up anything because in this number, not this number in particular, but in some other numbers, you might need one of the zeros to be significant when you have so many other zeros when you're expanding it or expanding the number. So in this case, what I would like for you to do is just simply circle all of the numbers that are between the times 10 to the something. Whatever is before the times 10 to the is significant. So that means every single digit you circle is significant. So therefore, I'm going to have 4 sig figs in this number. Okay, hopefully that helped you a little bit more with your homework. If you need any help, please stop by and see me. Come to RST, Redskin Support Time, every Tuesday or Thursday. And remember, this is going to be on our quiz on Friday. So if you need more assistance, please come and see me. Thanks.